They are a real playoff contender, especially with what they did in Tampa. And with what they did in Tampa, again, they proved me wrong. And I loved it. I loved every second of it. I thought Tampa was going to squeak by with a 4-point victory, 31-27. When in reality, the Patriots secured the victory with just over a minute and a half to go. And Tampa then drives down to get 7 on the board to make it 28-23. But that was just the final score. They have done something that I don't want to say surprised by, because I feel like surprise is like I didn't have any faith in them. No, of course I had faith in them. It was just that they had an extra bye. They did miss Chris Godwin and Bucky Irving, which is obviously a big deal for them, while also missing Mike Evans, but he was injured a while ago, so I don't necessarily include him in that. But, my buddy who's a big Tampa guy and the same buddy who's a Panther guy as well, Florida Panthers, he texted me, this game would have been totally different if we had Evans, Godwin, and Irving. And, when I read that, I go, yeah, obviously. Of course it would have been a different game. But I don't necessarily think that you still blow us out of you blow us out of the building. It's not like having those 3 players would have given you the ammunition to fire off your cannons and sink our ships. No, I think it still would have been a good game. I still think it would have been a close game that it might have been a shootout. It might have been, somewhere between 31-27, 35-31, any of these types of scores, right? 45-38 even. But could the Patriots still have won that game had they had all 3 players? Of course they could have. That's the whole point. You play the team that's in front of you. You don't sit there and concern yourself with, if we had our players, we would have, we could have beaten you. Yeah, well, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Injuries happen. It sucks because sometimes, you do want to see the best team go against the second best team to see who the best team is. So when injuries happen, it affects a lot and it sucks. Absolutely. But it was an interesting game, really, to say the least, because, of course, Tampa gets the ball, they march down, they score. Marcus Jones has that busting coverage, which wondering if it was Marcus Jones or Christian Gonzalez who screwed that up, because Marcus Jones was clearly playing zone. He clearly knew his assignment. Ibuka came up to him. He kind of gave a little shove, and Ibuka just broke out to his right, and Jones still had his head in the backfield. He was still looking at Baker Mayfield while Ibuka is just running over to his left, and no one is there. Because Gonzalez carried his man all the way up to the goal line until Ibuka caught it and then just basically trotted into the end zone. So after that, the Patriots get the ball, and it starts to rain. Talk about just picture-perfect convenience that when Tampa doesn't have the ball, it's sunshine and rainbows. When the Patriots have the ball, it's rain, it's hot. And then, of course, we don't score. But I don't know. I thought that was pretty funny. One of the things, though, that I thought helped New England win this game was they did a pretty damn good job of setting the edge on Baker Mayfield, making sure that he couldn't scramble. Did he get out of the pocket a couple of times? Of course he did. He's always going to find a way to do that, especially for his shorter stature as a quarterback. He's, 6 feet, 6'1" tops? So he's on the shorter end, of course. The way to make him beat you is obviously keep him in the pocket and try to throw over the lineman. And not for nothing, the way Milton Williams and Kyrus Tonga were getting into the backfield, pushing the pocket back was phenomenal. The D-line setting the edge and also doing that was fantastic. It was great to see. And that's why, Baker never scrambled. And it's interesting because he's the type of guy where he needs to roll out. He needs to throw on the run. He needs to create that type of, play. But the last 3 games, he hasn't scrambled for a single yard, and they've gone 1-2 in these last 3 games, including coming off a bye. As I said last week, Todd Bowles' teams coming off a bye aren't good. They're not that good. Why, I don't know, but hey. Then I want to get to, the end of the half. Massive turn of events. Again, you want to talk about momentum swing? The end of the half was a huge, huge momentum turner favoring New England, which was kind of surprising in a sense because looking at the end of the half, they get down to the 1-yard line and they call a quarterback sneak knowing that Tampa Bay had no timeouts with roughly around $1:47 to I think $1:55 remaining in the half. They call a quarterback sneak, and Drake May, even though he says he tried to score on that, clearly stood up and was just running into his lineman knowing full well that this was not going to work. It's almost like as soon as he snapped the ball, he realized that this play wasn't going to work and just said, screw it. And then just fell onto his ass, and there it is. But I know for myself, for Tony Romo, it clicked instantly. Did he even try? Did the Patriots purposely give up on first down in order to drain the clock? Because they ran it 2 more times. It wasn't until the 4th down where they actually threw the ball, which is something that I know a lot of Seattle Seahawks fans wish that Pete Carroll did in Super Bowl 49. But let's not forget the fact that he screwed up the timeout situation, which is why they had to throw the ball at some point on 2nd or 3rd down. Just saying. But to go for it on 4th down, when we'd finally gone to 4th down, I'm sitting there going, this is what I don't like about analytics. Kick the field goal, go and do it, tie game. We get the ball to start the second half. Let's go down, let's score, let's go up 7. The rest is history, right? We'll go from there. It was such a gutsy call to not only have to go for it, but to have Drake May in the shotgun to throw almost a back pylon fade to Stephon Diggs, where he had to go up, twist his body, and somehow come down with both feet right at the out of bounds marker on the side of the end zone. And it was wild because even when you watch that back though, you can see Hunter Henry looking like he's going to run it out, but then cuts back in. And if Drake May drilled him in the chest, that would have been a touchdown because I think it was Winfield was on Diggs. The corner that was initially on Diggs but went to Hunter Henry due to the stack formation, as I talked about last week when Drake London was stacking with Darnell Mooney, which threw Gonzalez off of London, this, that, and the other. But when Hunter Henry's turning to come back in, there's a good 1.5 foot distance between him and the corner, and all Drake May had to do was just drill Henry right in the chest, and that would have been an easy touchdown, an easier touchdown. But this is why you have a guy like Stephon Diggs. With that play right there, you got to have it on top of the onside kick. Him getting drilled and knocked out practically on the onside kick. but his hands were, boom, this ball is mine now. And I will say, it was interesting because then throughout halftime, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, why did they do what they did? What was the purpose, for that? And yes, I think the main argument we could sit here and say is, of course, the Patriots did it to drain the clock so that the Bucs didn't get an opportunity to at least get any points on the board, knowing full well the Bucs were out of timeouts. It was just under 2 minutes, and we have 4 chances from the 1-yard line to punch this in. And it took kind of a crazy play to do it, but they did it. And so, I want to say that the easy answer being they were afraid of Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers moving the ball down the field like they did at the end of the game after Travion Henderson scored that touchdown to seal the deal, right? But I'm wondering if there's another thought as to why they did that. If you have a reason, I'd love to hear it. Comment down below. By the way, don't forget to follow all the social medias right here down below. It takes a quick second, quick subscription. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. Would really love for you to just click subscribe and support the channel, support the show, and also this way. I'm doing this backwards. And don't forget to support the Grid Network. A bunch of great sports commentators, great guys. So if you could please do that. But again, thinking about that 4th down, what would we be saying if that didn't work? Right? What would we be saying? I know I'd sit here and absolutely rip Vrabel and the Patriots a new one for thinking that going for it on 4th down, throwing a very low percentage ball in the back corner like that was an absolutely atrocious play call. Would I press to have them run the ball again? No, because you keep running up the ball with Big Vita Vea right there. The dude is massive. Like, what are we thinking trying to punch it through when, of course, Jared Wilson, Garrett Bradbury, and Mike Owenu have not been perfect at run blocking like that, especially against a guy like Vea. So it's a really interesting point because you get all the praise when it works, but you also take the heat when it doesn't. And don't get me wrong, I'm pumped at work because we were able to get the double score, the 2 touchdowns there to go up 14. We were down 10-7, and then next thing you know, we're up 21-10. Like that in an instant. It felt great. But it was definitely a second guess for me. Because I'm looking at that as, is this the guts, that is making that call? Or is this the analytics saying you should go for this? And again, it worked. I'm not going to really, question it that much further, but it was just something where, this, when you fall down on 1st and goal like that at the 1, when you barely try, when you give up a down, does that bode well with the football gods and that say, hey, like you purposely gave up, now we're gonna pay you back, something like that. I don't know. It's all in jest, right? But the final stretch of plays that I want to say is, of course, the Buccaneers' second to last drive, where they're marching the ball. The ball's at our 27-yard line. It's 3rd and 3. Cade Otton gets lit up by Craig Woodson, and he obviously drops the ball for an incompletion. So it's 4th and 3 at the plus 27. And this is where Caleb came, did a tackle and stunt. So, yeah, Milton Williams going up. Chason comes right around, shoots up the A-gap, and sacks Baker Mayfield. He tries to flip it off. They called it a sack, which, yeah, it was. But I just really wanted to point out the Milton Williams and his, the play design as well as his contribution to it, because when you go back, one of the best angles you'll see of this, and they even show it on the broadcast. If you don't have the all-22 film, you'll see it on the broadcast. Milton Williams is lined up in between the guard and the left guard and the left tackle, otherwise known as the B-gap. And when he pushes, he goes straight up, where he takes up more of the left guard's body. So he's focused slightly more on the left guard. And obviously Tristan Wirfs, the left tackle, is backing up, focusing on Milton Williams until you have Craig Woodson, who shot down between Williams and Chason. You could see him walking down, and then the ball's hiked, and he runs up to then get the attention of the left tackle, Wirfs, which then now completely negates Wirfs being able to help out their left guard on Milton Williams. So when Chason wraps around the way he does, the left guard is trying to break off of Milton Williams to do something about Chason. He barely gets a hand on him, but Chason, with a full head of steam, it just blows right by him because most of the left guard's energy is on Milton Williams, and Tristan Wirfs is worrying more about Craig Woodson coming on the safety blitz. And that's how Chason gets into the backfield, not to mention Spillane standing right overhead of the center, fakes blitzing, but does so in a way that forces the center to drift to his right, away from the left guard, the left side of the line, allowing that massive hole for Chason to just come straight up through. I thought that play design for the tackle and stunt to work like that, along with Woodson coming in, was honestly a thing of beauty. Absolute beauty. And I had to sit there and just rewind it a couple of times, not to understand what was going on, but to just imagine coming up with this. You could not have run that any better. And such a key moment in the game to have it go the way it did, I thought was just picturesque beauty. Mona Lisa, the way the play was drawn up, unbelievable, which led to, of course, the turnover on downs. And then 2 plays later, Tampa's got 2 timeouts remaining on second and 10 with a $1:43 remaining. And all of a sudden, he just bounces outside and is running up the sideline, which had to have been one of the funniest things that you or I have ever seen on a football field. The fact that he gets to the 25, the plus 25, the plus 20-yard line, somewhere around there, and you see his head immediately turn to look towards the sideline to ask them as he's running, what should I do? Should I go down or should I score? I know a lot of fantasy managers are probably freaking out going, score, you jacket, get your ass in the end zone. But they tell him to go score, and he just points up like towards the end zone, okay. And cuts inside. That's how fast he was running, which was insane, which was awesome and quite honestly hilarious. But I know this has been talked about a little bit, but let's just say he drops down somewhere around, before the 10-yard line. He cuts in the way he does and then just drops down. They tell him to go down. He goes down right before the 10-yard line. he would do that right around the minute 33 mark. Because at that moment, when I hit pause and he's in between the 20 and the 25 and looking towards the sideline, the very first time he does that, there's a $1:35 left on the clock. So I'm giving him 2 more seconds. He drops down right before the 10-yard line, cuts inside, drops down. So $1:33, let's say, right? Then Tampa's going to burn their timeout. So it's going to be a minute 33, minute 32, just depending on when they blow the whistle and, when the timeout obviously comes in. But that's going to be their second to last timeout, which then Drake May will kneel it. You get a $1:30, maybe a $1:29, the latest, which now makes 2nd and 11. Tampa burns their timeout, so there's no timeouts remaining. And then another knee brings that down to around 50 seconds. If you drain the play clock all the way down, you get to around 50 seconds. And then you knee it again. That is around 48 seconds. So when it's 4th down and either 4th and goal or, 4th down just outside the 10, just before the 15, you're sitting there lining up for a field goal to put us up 8 points with a handful of seconds remaining. That's it. You're not going to get a lot of time left on the clock because it's going to drain 40 seconds. So you kick the field goal right around out. Hey, even for the sheer benefit, I'll say you kick the field goal at 11 to 12 seconds remaining. The Buccaneers are going to have under 10 seconds to get the kickoff, depending on how they kick it off, whether they squib it or they can't squib it technically, but whether you kick it in the field of play, that's going to drain some clock, while also they have under 10 seconds to march all the way down the field to score and then get the 2-point conversion. So either way, to anyone saying, oh, he should have taken the knee or that scoring was, the wrong thing to do or that scoring was the right thing to do, it honestly didn't matter based on the clock, based on the timeout situations. It didn't matter. And the fact that he scored, hey, good for the kid. And if you had him in fantasy and you started him, good for you. You just got another 69-yard touchdown. All right? So those to me were just some of the big plays of this game, and what they were able to do and what they were able to accomplish was fantastic. And talking about the game, of course, now, I want to talk about some of the big plays of the game that really, again, you can sit there and talk about, question, and say, was this the right thing to do? Was it not? Did they make the right decision to have Henderson score? The play design was perfect. But with that, we're going to go right into the game day grades. So starting with A's. There were a lot of guys, I think that deserved A's, but if I was going to be easy or a tough grader, I gave A's to Travion Henderson, Jack Gibbons, Kyrus Tonga, and Milton Williams. So, of course, talking about Travion Henderson, his 69-yard run, he also had the 55-yarder just coming out of the half. So that put us up 21-10. 14 carries, 147 yards, 10.5 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. He tried. It's funny because both those touchdowns came on him bouncing to the outside. They were mostly inside runs that he bounced to the outside. I think the 55-yarder was an outside run, but he kind of cut it in short and then bounced out and got all the way. Otherwise, yeah, phenomenal game from Travion. His breakout game. Now, hopefully that spurs something in him, that it keeps him going. But awesome job from Travion. Then Jack Gibbons was everywhere, I felt, on Sunday. When it came defensively, him getting, tackles, because he had 10 total tackles, led the team, 5 solo tackles, 1 tackle for loss, getting into the backfield. And that one pass deflection, he nearly had that interception on him, diving to his left. And then, he was there, multiple pressures on the quarterback. That's huge. That's what disrupts the flow. And when Baker's trying to step up in the pocket, bam, we're right there. Which is why I also had Khyiris Tonga and Milton Williams. Friggin' Tonga truck, man. Khyiris Tonga not only crushing it on the D-line, forcing the line of scrimmage backwards, collapsing the pocket, but also being the best fullback that this team has had since friggin' Heath Evans? Loved you, Heath. You were awesome. And now we got Khyiris Tonga, D-line, converted fullback. Let's keep the ball rolling, man. We all know Mike Vrabel's contributions to the offense. I don't mind it. Let's keep it rolling. And then Milton Williams. I talked about the big play and how instrumental he was on that 4th and 3 sack at the 27. That was huge. So Milton Williams, great game. Khyiris Tonga, Jack Gibbons, Travion Henderson, great games. Then for B's, doesn't mean that these guys doesn't mean that they didn't have great games. I thought a bunch of guys had great games today, or on Sunday. But B's, Stephon Diggs, Matt Collins, Kayvon Chaisson, and Drake May. Now, starting with Drake May, this is controversial in a sense. Do we win that game without Drake May on Sunday? No, we do not. Absolutely not. Drake May was massive in why we won that game on Sunday. No two ways about it. But statistically, when you look at his numbers, it was not his best game. Going 16 for 31, just barely above 50% completion percentage. For 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, a 55 QBR, and an 89.4 passer rating. His first passer rating under 100 since, I think, week 1. So, Drake May, on paper, did not have a great day. And this is why I tell you, what the numbers say doesn't equal the performance. Just because you can sit here and read a box score to me and say, man, Drake May sucked on Sunday, I'd tell you to watch the game again and tell me that he sucked, because he didn't. Drake May was a massive part of the reason why we won that game. And when you want to talk about that one interception, was it a bad throw? Absolutely. But I want to take you to a couple plays before that where he got his bell rung right on the sideline, and they didn't call it. Now, yes, was he in bounds? Of course. Was it, by the letter of the law, a late hit? No, it was not. But did the defender hit Drake May with his chin on the crown of the helmet? Yes, he did. And have we seen plays like that in the NFL get called? Because he was clearly giving himself up. He was being wrapped up, and it was considerably slowing down. There was no reason to rock him the way we did outside of just saying, we need to get this guy out of the game because he's kicking our ass. And we know we'll be better if they throw in, I can't even think of our friggin' backup quarterback. I was going to say Jacoby Brissett, but I'm like, wait, nope, he's not on it. Josh Dobbs. They're going to be, considerably worse with Josh Dobbs at quarterback, so we need to get Drake May out of the game. Hence, that late hit. Well, late hit, I should say, because technically it wasn't late. He was still in bounds. The thing that bothers me is, first, Drake May, have we seen calls like that get made in the NFL? Yes, we have. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. Those guys get the calls. And I've heard talks throughout the week when are the refs going to treat Drake May like the rest of those quarterbacks? Which, to me, I want to sit there and go, yeah, when's that going to happen? That should already happen. Drake May's a superstar, this, that, and the other. But then I started thinking about it, going, well, you either call it or you don't. I don't care if it's Drake May, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, or even Joshua Dobbs. If that is a call that is made by NFL officials for certain players, you either call it for everybody, and I'm talking quarterbacks specifically, not everyone else, but you either call that for every quarterback or you don't call it at all because Drake May was still in bounds. If you want to add the targeting rule, if you want to change the whole crown of the helmet tackle or issue, that can be discussed. That can be talked about, which, if you're calling it that, I would agree. That would be the definition of targeting. He was leading with the crown of the helmet, clearly socked him right underneath the chin. And you could even argue that that is what led to the interception. The next play I think it was 2 plays later. 2 plays later, Drake May was trying to hit Mac Hollins scrambling to his right. And the funny part is, at the start of the play, the design, they had Mac Hollins. He had Mac Hollins open on his first read. If he caught the ball, dropped back, looked, and fired, right, coming off his back foot, he plants his back foot and fires, he would have had Mac Hollins wide open in the back of the end zone, just to the left of the field goal post. But because Drake May, I don't know what was he thinking. I don't know if he was slightly concussed from that hit, which is why he kind of was delayed that half a second. But because of that, he started scrambling to his right. Even on the scramble, he had Mac Hollins open. When you see the All-22 film from the back of the end zone, you see Mac Hollins had a step on his guy, and Drake May, when he threw the ball, threw it behind. So Mac Hollins had to slow down to cut up to try to go get the ball, but it fed right into Jamel Dean's hands. That's why he threw the interception. Had Drake May led Hollins towards the side of the end zone, Mac Hollins would have had to lean forward, make the catch, keep his feet in bounds, and it would have been a touchdown. And it would have been a fairly easy touchdown. But Drake May threw the ball behind him. That's what led to the interception. So, otherwise, speaking of Mac Hollins, I thought both him and Stephon Diggs had great games on Sunday. Just how, they played. Obviously, I talked about Stephon Diggs with that phenomenal halftime 4th down touchdown, as well as him being able to hold on to the ball after getting rocked on that excellent onside kick by the Buccaneers, which I know onside kicks don't get recovered by the kicking team often, but that was a perfect kick for that to happen, especially with how Diggs took that hit. But Mac Hollins led the team, 6 receptions, 106 yards, and had that 54-yard long bomb up the right sideline, and it fed right into his breadbasket. And then, of course, Kayvon Chaisson. He was in the backfield a lot, getting pressures. I feel like he's taking over and doing more in terms of getting pressures than Harold Landry is. Harold Landry's kind of disappeared the last couple of games. So, hoping after tonight's game, everything is going to be easier. They're going to take a break. They get the win. and they're all going to relax, and hopefully Landry can get back to pursuing the quarterback much better. All right, as for C's, I get end of the half situation. I already discussed this at length, but just to reiterate, I gave it a C because it worked out. Had it didn't work out, it would have been an F. It's just that simple. I mean, it's a gutsy play, and when you're talking about gutsy situations like that, don't get me wrong, it's great. You could tell the whole team was behind the call, just like going for two on fourth down or after a touchdown to win the game instead of kicking the extra point to tie and send to overtime. This was a situation where gutsy call by Vrabel, and it worked out. Very happy that it did work out and that we scored the touchdown off it, but that's why I give it a C. As for D's, I gave it to Jared Wilson, Marcus Jones. Marcus Jones, I said earlier that he lost his coverage on Ibuka, which is why Ibuka scored that 21-yarder to start the game. And you could argue that actually Marcus Jones was in the right. He was actually playing his position, and it was Christian Gonzalez who got carried away with his receiver playing more man versus the rest of the team playing zone. That's more for the coaches to sit there and dissect because they know what they called. They know what they were doing. Otherwise, the other thing is Marcus Jones dropped the punt. I understand he doesn't do that often, but he did recover it, and it was slippery conditions in Tampa. It was raining. It was humid. It's not going to be rainy and humid here in Foxborough as the winter months are coming on, but it's going to be snowing. It's going to be cold. The ball's going to get hot, and it might deflate. Oh, my God, it might deflate in January? Where have we heard that before? Otherwise, he just has to make sure he holds on to the football. At the end of the day, you got to hold on to the football. That's rule number one. Rule number one. So then also Jared Wilson, he got owned by Vita Vea. Like it was, I thought he was okay, but not great. There were plenty of times where the pocket was not being held up for Drake May, but also Drake May was getting rid of the ball quicker. And also the run game, it's almost like he couldn't do anything up the middle because both massive runs, Travion bounced to the outside of it. And so those guys got D's. And then for F, again, it was a hard game where I was really nitpicking, which is why, Jared Wilson and Marcus Jones are there. But for F's, I said special teams penalties because on back-to-back punt returns, we cost ourselves twice with two holding calls. Brendan Schooler held on in the first quarter, which had to start instead of from the New England 46-yard line, the minus 46, which is our 46-yard line. Instead, we got brought all the way back to R28. Luckily for us, it was the Kyle Williams touchdown, so it didn't matter. But that's a massive difference, starting nearly 20 yards from, 20-yard difference, either starting basically from midfield or deep in your own territory. So school has to clean that up. And then the next punt return we had in the second quarter, Charles Woods also got a holding penalty, and that got us, so from instead of us starting at our 14-yard line, we started from our own 7. And we ended up punting after 5 plays. And even though the box score will say it was a 4-play drive, it was because there was a PI call and the play was negated. which technically means there were 4 plays, not 5, even though 5 plays were run. So it's a whole thing. Otherwise, those are my game day grades. And checking our comments here, we got L. Mig Giaz saying May needs a clean game today and can't give a bad team any kind of life. Absolutely. And that's go back to our game versus Atlanta. Our game versus Atlanta. I wouldn't have been surprised if we hung a 40, maybe even a 50 burger on them. It was that end of the half fumble where it threw everything off from there on out. The rest of the game, you could tell Drake May was in his head because of that fumble. And so I agree.